Hello, Jason Cain here, and welcome to the Ancient Wisdom Modern Mind podcast. And today, I want to share with you a slightly different perspective on our understanding of time, mindfulness, and higher states of awareness. We are all familiar with phrases like, "Time flies when you are having fun," and "a watched pot never boils." And this subjective perception of time is made all the more apparent by the various temporal illusions we experience. This suggests that our perception of time is a subjective experience of the perceived duration of events, which can differ significantly between different individuals and/or in different circumstances. And yet, paradoxically, physical time appears to be more or less objective. Our modern understanding of time is rooted in Newtonian classical mechanics, but our sense of time is a product of consciousness. This at first glance seems to suggest that time is fixed, but I am suggesting that the fixed idea of time is flawed because of the old idea that time is a four-dimensional construct. Yet, if instead we accept a new theory of time, where time is a ninth-dimensional force, which requires 8-dimensional points of focus to exist, 3 geometric dimensions, 3 relative dimensions, and 2 temporal dimensions, and it is these 2 temporal dimensions that make time a subjective experience for human beings. Other animal species lack either one or two of the 2 temporal dimensions, preference awareness and concept construction, and so are not consciously aware of the passage of time or their own impermanence and mortality, or even conscious understanding of the past beyond anything more than pure instinct or behavioral conditioning. With a 9-dimensional understanding of time, we can appreciate that we do not so much perceive time itself, but experience changes in the passage of consciousness. In particular, we are aware of the temporal relationship between events, and we perceive events as being either simultaneous or successive. Our perception of the sequence or order of time is because temporal dimensions are linear perceptual dimensions, which means we perceived in a one-directional movement. So here is a breakdown of the 9 dimensions. Geometric dimensions are spatial dimensions having physical quantities such as length, width, and depth. First dimension is length, such as a line which is a measure of one dimension or point in space. In physics and mathematics, the dimensions of a mathematical space or object is informally defined as the minimum number of coordinates needed to specify any point within it. Thus, a line has a dimension of 1 because only one coordinate is needed to specify a point on it. For example, the point at 5 on a number line. Second dimension is width, which has 2 points in space. For example, a surface such as a plane or the surface of a cylinder or sphere has a dimension of 2 because 2 coordinates are needed to specify a point on it. Third dimension is light. Light creates the perception of depth, or 3-dimensional space, when light bounces off 2-dimensional points. The inside of a cube, cylinder, or a sphere is 3-dimensional because 3 coordinates are needed to locate a point within these spaces. But 3 coordinates, or even the perception of depth, such as in 3D, is only possible because of light refraction. For example, our depth perception comes from our brain's ability to put together 2 2D images in such a way as to extrapolate depth. And this depth perception is only possible because of light entering through 2 points in space, namely the eyes. Relative dimensions can be seen as the fabric of the geometric dimensions and are what gives curvature to geometry. Fourth dimension is created by electromagnetism. The electromagnetic field is a type of physical interaction that occurs between electrically charged particles. The electromagnetic force usually exhibits electromagnetic fields such as electric fields, magnetic fields, and light, and is one of the four fundamental interactions, commonly called forces, in nature. Fifth dimension is a gravity field. Gravity fields have a binding effect on the fabric of the relative dimensions. A five-dimensional space is an abstraction which occurs frequently in mathematics, where it is a legitimate construct. As an example, in their 1938 paper, Einstein and Bergman were among the first to introduce the modern viewpoint that a four-dimensional theory is derived from a five-dimensional theory with complete symmetry in all five dimensions. They suggested that electromagnetism, fourth dimension, resulted from a gravitational field that is polarized in the fifth dimension. Sixth dimension is nuclear force, which is a force that acts between the protons and neutrons of atoms. This is then divided into the weak nuclear force and the strong nuclear force. Strong nuclear forces help in holding subatomic particles of protons together and also the nucleons together at a larger scale. Energy is released when a nuclear weapon detonates, which is due to strong nuclear forces. The weak force is responsible for the mechanism of interaction between subatomic particles that is responsible for the radioactive decay of atoms. Temporal dimensions are perceptual dimensions which are perceived differently from spatial dimensions in that there is only one directional movement. For example, we cannot move freely in time, but are forced to subjectively move in one direction. Seventh dimension is preference awareness. This is the state of being aware of and responsive to one's surroundings. Consciousness constructs mental representations and abstract objects or abilities that make up the fundamental building blocks of a hierarchical awareness of reality. Examples are science from the perspective of classical physics, the evolution hypothesis, and polytheistic religions are all a consequence of preference awareness. Dualism and the idea of karma are constructs of being self-aware of one's surround, and the experience of cause and effect are examples of dualistic preference awareness, and so is nihilism, existentialism, absurdism, and minimalism versus consumerism. These are all variants of dualistic thinking or preference awareness. Eighth dimension is concept construction. This is the comprehension of the unity of reality as one interconnectedness. Oneness is a concept construction of a monotheistic ideology. This philosophical focus is on the idea that there is one God, or one interconnected multi-dimensional reality, a singular divine, which manifests itself in many ways, including as the Christian Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. But equally so is the concept of mindfulness, a form of monotheistic perception. From a science perspective, quantum theory is also a product of concept construction, and we could even sarcastically say that science is finally catching up to the mystics' understanding of reality. Ninth dimension is time. In physics, time is any mathematical model that fuses the three dimensions of space and the one dimension of time into a single four-dimensional space-time continuum. But this understanding is really a fusion of the geometric dimensions and the relative dimensions, a simple mechanical understanding of time, which is not wrong, but is a simplification of a temporal concept to serve as a functional application of Newtonian classical mechanics. So what is the time dimension? Since time is one of the temporal dimensions, we can actually give it a name. And to expand this, I would like to take a particle known in quantum theory as the quark and postulate that quarks are actually time particles. These quark particles consist of both matter and antimatter particles that are constantly popping into existence and popping back out, making time a bubbling brew of ephemeral particle fields. From the mystic's perspective, it is possible to perceive these quark particles as light particles that are constantly popping into existence and popping back out again, like a swarm of microscopic fireflies. And I have little doubt that most people, after a deep meditation session, will have also seen these time particles, but have simply dismissed what they are seeing because quarks are outside their concept construction of reality. I would like to also add an important disassociation between time particles and what are known as floaters, which are tiny specks that can be seen in your field of vision. My intention is not to dig deep into the scientific details of this hypothesis, but to look at time from its subjective experience in higher states of consciousness, such as meditative states that create the sense of timelessness, or more popularly called the now or present moment, a state where the mind transcends self or ego and forms a transcended consciousness. From this perspective, you could say that the meditator is able to affect the one-directional movement of time by entering into the ninth temporal dimension of time. The meditator is able to slow and even stop the subjective experience of time by bringing an end to their concept construction or entering into the ninth dimension of time. This control of concept construction lifts the awareness into a heightened awareness, or the now moment. The mind enters into ninth dimensional awareness. This is also why I have classified mindfulness into the eighth dimensional state of concept construction. Mindfulness is the process of engaging in self-contemplation, or to engage in transcendental contemplation, or devout religious contemplation, or quiescent introspection. Mindfulness is the perfection of concept construction. Ninth dimensional awareness gives the mind control over the one-directional movement of time, and the individual is able to subjectively affect their objective interaction with time's duration. More simply put, they are able to slow down or speed up time within their objective reality, and this can be perceived as a subjective movement of time by the external observer. Examples of this are the martial artist who could move too fast for his opponent, or the yogi that is able to extend his biological lifespan. In both of these examples, the objective reality of time is affected by the subjective experience. So that's it for now, and I'll leave you with a time pun to relieve the brain strain involved in trying to understand the temporal dimensions. Did you hear about that guy who fell into the infinity pool? Yeah, it took him forever to get out. So, if you like this hypothesis on the subjective experience of time and higher consciousness, and would like to explore more interesting articles, or take your spiritual journey deeper, learn about meditation, or go even deeper with your meditation journey, I offer books, instructional podcasts, online meditation and personal development courses that cover a variety of meditation and metaphysical topics available at Amazon, Audible, iTunes, and Udemy. Plus, great free articles on Blogger.com and podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Anchor Podcasts, YouTube, and in the Facebook community Meditation, Mindfulness, and more. And it would be my privilege to have you join our community and share your own journey and thoughts. And this is important not only to me, but also in helping other students in their personal journey. Thank you for listening. This podcast was created by Jason Cain, text copyright 2019 by Jason Cain, and production copyright 2019 by Jason Cain. All rights reserved.